In this video, we're going to talk about the switch statement, which is a nice alternative to a long string of if-elses that you might write, especially if you're getting input from the user and building a text-based interface. So, for example, let's take a look at this ship.c file. So, what this program is doing is it is getting from the user a serial number, so we can see that's what our scanf is doing, but really it's actually just recording the first character from that serial number, right? Because we have a char here and we're running scanf with a character type, and so whatever the first character that the user inputs is going to be assigned that value, serial number will be assigned to that value. And so then, based on the first letter, print which ship type the ship is. So let me just scroll down here a little bit so we can see. So the basic idea, even if you haven't seen switch statements before, you can kind of read this. The basic idea is that if our serial number started with B, we're going to want to print battleship. If it started with C, we're going to want to print cruiser. If it started with D, destroyer, F, frigate. And if it's none of those, then we're going to want to print air. And so the switch statement allows us to do this just really elegantly and in an organized, nice way. So the idea here is we have our switch statement, and then there's what we call the controlling expression, and that's just going to be either a int or a char. I'll put this up here. Controlling expression is an int or a char. So it can't be a double that we've learned about. It has to be an int or a char. And then we're just testing for equality. So we start our switch statement with our curly braces, and then this is saying if serial num is equal to B or is equal to lowercase b, print battleship, equal to C, lowercase c, print cruiser. And so in general, we can think of this as we have one label set, we have some set of statements. So here our statements are just this single printf statement, but we could have multiple statements here. We could call other functions, we could have whatever complex code we want to be in there. But unlike an if statement, we don't have to put curly braces there, we just write our statements, and then between each one we need a break. Because if we don't have this break, then we might evaluate more than one of these, and we can see what happens in that case in a moment. But we have these different cases that we've defined, and if none of these is true, then we're going to print error. So let's just take a look and see what this does. So I would need to compile it, and I would run it, and we need to enter the serial number of our ship. So I think B89 would be 1. Like we said, it's just anything that starts with a B is going to be a battleship. Anything that starts with a C is going to be a cruiser. D is going to be a destroyer. F is going to be a frigate. And then if we had started with, I guess, a number or some other letter that we didn't have a case for, then we get an error. So one thing you might ask is, what happens if we don't include these breaks? So let's just go ahead and take these out and see what happens. Okay, so we don't have our breaks anymore. We're going to need to recompile. And let's run. So say I enter something that starts with a B, so I'm not in that first condition there. It's telling, in this case, since we don't have those breaks, we print all of them, right? Let's go take a look at our code. So this was true. So we did run this print, but because we don't have the breaks, we then run all of the rest of these. We can see, say we did something that started with D, D, OG 100. So there we just start from the D and we keep going, right? So we need to, one easy thing to forget is those break statements. We'll need to remember to put those in, and I'm going to put them back in. I'm just using paste, as you can see, to put those back in. And so we can always have this default value, which is really convenient. So the last thing I wanted to show is just how anything that we write as a switch, we could also have written as an if-else, right? So let's just delete this and see in a comment, what would it look like to write this as an if-else? Write the B cases so we need to say something like if serial, oh, I meant to put this in a comment. Maybe I can do a multi-line comment, and I'm going to end it like that. So I would need to say if serial num equals B, then I should print Battleship and then I need to say else if serial num is lowercase b, then I also need to print Battleship. Oh, and I guess I would need new line characters here. Not that it really matters, because this is just an exercise to sort of see how, when we do just want to test equality a bunch of times, the switch statement is really nice, because this is just not that great. We could maybe make this a little nicer, just depending on what style you like, by instead of making this two if statements, we could say something like if serial num is uppercase B or serial num is lowercase b, because in both cases we do the same thing. Then we want to do that. But it would be up to you. So the big idea here is that it's really just nicer to use a switch statement if we're just testing equality a bunch of times on ints or chars. But you could always use an if statement anytime you use a switch statement. And that is the switch statement.